Welcome to Lesson 3, the geographical and political situation at the time of Christ's ministry. Today, what I'd like to do is provide you with knowledge and understanding of what geographical features and the political situation at the time of Christ, so that you can sufficiently understand the role that they played in the events that are recorded not only in the book of John, but throughout the rest of Scripture as well. I'd like to be able to apply the lessons that we can learn from the Dead Sea to the life of the individual believer who is not living a life in service to God. And I'd like to encourage you to give out to others the truths that they have learned and are learning in service and witness to others around them. This lesson deals with the geography of Israel and the political realities of the time of Christ's ministry. Although it is more factual than necessarily inspirational, the lesson provides a proper assessment and visual picture of Jesus' movements throughout Israel. As I go through this lesson, I've got many slides that I'll show you, and also along with that, you'll notice there is a link to a Nearpod. And on that Nearpod, you may not be familiar with Nearpod, but on that Nearpod, you can take a virtual tour of some of the sites of Israel. Let's talk about where Israel is, its size. It's a really small country. It only is about 390 miles long, and it ranges anywhere from 30 miles to 80 miles wide, depending on the location. So it's roughly the size of Massachusetts and Connecticut combined. Israel has long been considered the center of the world. As far as mass is concerned, this claim is really quite true. And here, God has prepared this incredible country, and God is going to use that location to really center his work of redemption. God has blessed this tiny country with every imaginable type of climate, from the snowy Mount Hermon to the tropical Dead Sea region. City dwellers that leave Jerusalem with snow on the ground can drive east about 30 miles and get a suntan at the beach of the Dead Sea. Or they can drive less than 5 hours north and go skiing on the slopes of Mount Hermon. The Mediterranean Sea and 3,000-foot high mountains are only miles apart. Beautiful, lush green valleys are about 2 hours' drive from hot, arid, barren desert. Within 200 miles of each other are Mount Hermon, which is 9,200 feet high, and the lowest point on the earth, the Dead Sea, which is almost 1,300 feet below sea level. In contrast, Death Valley here in the United States is only about 280 feet below sea level. The crops that they grow is varied. The plains of Sharon, which is just south of Mount Carmel, yield world-famous Jaffa oranges and bananas. Galilee offers grapes, cucumbers, and almost any other type of vegetable you can imagine. Nowhere else on earth can such a variety of food be grown in such a small area. The political divisions of the land. At the time of Christ, there were three major political divisions: Judea, Samaria, and Galilee. If we look at the Roman provinces, Rome ruled Israel at this time, and Rome divided the land into three political regions or areas or provinces. They combined Judea and Samaria. During Christ's time, 7 different men ruled this area. It is an area of broken hills and valleys, and it is good for grazing herds, for flocks. The city of Jerusalem was a natural focal point of this particular area. The second portion was Galilee and Perea. Herod Antipas ruled this area. During biblical times, the area was heavily wooded. Was well supplied with water from 25 inches of annual precipitation and runoff from Mount Hermon, so the soil was very rich and very fertile. Then Iturea and Trachonitis, which is northern Galilee area. Philip ruled this area. Trachonitis was located northeast of the Sea of Galilee because the Iturians were more of a nomadic it's really kind of difficult to specify where these people were at any particular time. And then there is a fourth region, what we often refer to as Decapolis. Uh, Although it wasn't officially a Roman province, it was under Roman partial control and influence. It's comprised of 10 Greek cities, which is why it was called Decapolis, Deca meaning 10, polis meaning city. The coins of these cities were often stamped with words that indicate they were, at least to some extent, autonomous, independent, sovereign cities in that region. The geographical divisions, there were 6 different areas. We're going to move from the Mediterranean Sea and head east as we go through this. So toward the Mediterranean Sea, running along it, from the coast of the Mediterranean all the way to roughly where Mount Carmel is called the coastal plain. And ranging from 6 to 20 miles wide, this area had a lot of fertile farmland. Uh, this area contains some of the richest soil in the world even now. In fact, a large part of the most desirable land in Palestine is in this narrow area, and it's still fought over heavily today. The Shephelah. The Shephelah is between the coastal plain and the hilly areas. It's a series of little foothills. This area corresponds to almost any rolling hill section of North America. Uh, Low hills ranging from 500 to 1,000 feet in elevation. This area is particularly suited for growing olives, for growing grapes and grains, and for farming activities. It once served as kind of a buffer zone between the Palestinians who lived along the coast and the Israelites who lived in the mountains. And so even today, it's still a much disputed area. The Cisjordan Hills. These hills commonly associated with Israel's history. Most of Israel's cities and the people that lived at the time of Christ were located in this area. The hills range from 1,500 to 3,000 feet high. The elevation increases to the north, and the hills become the Lebanon Mountains in northern Galilee. The mountains rise to an elevation to about 10,000 feet. Then we have the Jordan Valley. The Jordan Valley stretches from the Sea of Galilee on to the Dead Sea. However, it is only a small section of one of the most remarkable geographic depressions on the earth. In its full extent, it is known as the Afro-Arabian Rift Valley. This system is the most important continental rift system known to modern geologists. 2 continental plates meet along this rift, with the land to the east of the rift moving northward about 1 centimeter per year, about a half an inch. The land to the west of the rift going anywhere from a half centimeter to a full centimeter. So you're looking at roughly 3/4 to an inch worth of movement between these 2 planes in a year. The rift begins in the Amanus Mountains in southeastern Turkey and extends southward through western Syria, where it is known as Gab. Uh, then it goes on southward through Lebanon, where it is known as the Bekaa Valley, and into Israel, where we know it as the Jordan Rift Valley. It continues down through the Gulf of Aqaba to the Gulf of Eilat on the Red Sea. There it parallels the Red Sea all the way to Ethiopia, where it splits. An eastern rift extends to the Indian Ocean. The western rift penetrates Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Mozambique. It's a total of almost 4,000 miles by air. Now, if you consider that the Earth is about 25,000 miles in circumference, we're looking at almost 1/6 of the Earth's circumference from this one geographic entity. This single rift is responsible for creating the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea in Israel. But then all the way down in Africa, you have Lake Rudolph, Lake Albert, Lake Edward, and Lake Victoria. It's responsible for separating the island of Madagascar from the continent of Africa itself. And due to the constant moving of the 2 continental plates along this valley, between 200 and 300 earthquakes occur somewhere along the rift every day. Many of them are fairly mild. Although the distance from the Sea of Galilee to the north, in the north to the Dead Sea in the south is only about 65 miles if you go in a straight line, if you were to take a boat down the Jordan River winds so much that you would travel more than 200 miles to get from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. The Jordan River ends where it flows into the Dead Sea, which again is about 292 feet, or 1,292 feet below sea level, and is about 1,300 feet deep. About 6 million tons of water flow into the Dead Sea every day, but the water has nowhere to go. The Dead Sea has no outlet. Because of the intense heat in the area, the water evaporates very quickly, leaving behind about 25% solid material, making it one of the wealthiest mineral deposits in the world. Next, we move on to the Transjordan Hills. As the name implies, these hills and mountains lie on the other side, or the east side, trans meaning across, the east side of the Jordan River. This area is high plateau, rises gradually from the north, about 1,320 feet high. To the south, it's higher than even 3,900 feet. If you look at the cities in this area, many cities you can probably, as you're reading through Scripture, you will recognize. But the various accounts of Jesus' ministry mention 21 cities in Israel. Most of these cities were located in what we consider the Cisjordan Hills. If you have a Bible map, it might even be helpful to look at where these cities are located as you read through the Scripture. If we go back to the Dead Sea, I'd like to make some application to the Dead Sea to Christians, to many Christians. The Dead Sea aptly describes a lot of Christians today. The Jordan River empties a steady stream of fresh water into the Dead Sea at an astounding rate. Yet the sea is almost solid salt. Nothing can live in it. No vegetation grows within miles of its shore. In fact, the salt content is so high that it is difficult to even swim in. Tasting the water of the Dead Sea burns the tongue for several minutes. Drinking it is lethal. So how does fresh water that flows into the lake become so deadly? The answer is really a scientific one. You have water flowing in, evaporation taking place, but evaporation only evaporates the water. It leaves behind the solid content. And since the Dead Sea has no outlet, over time that solid content has increased and increased and increased. So Christians sometimes become spiritually poisoned, dry, and dead because although they take in the Word, they take in the Scripture, they go to church on Sunday, Sunday night, Wednesday, they never give out the Word. They have no outlet for evangelism. They have no outlet in service. And those types of Christians often become like the Dead Sea, always taking in, but never giving out. So you need to ask yourself, is your spiritual life fresh and vibrant? Is it yielding a harvest of fish like the Sea of Galilee? Or is it lifeless and meaningless like the Dead Sea? Because our lack of service for the Lord causes us to become like the Dead Sea. So I encourage you, if you're a Christian today, find a way that you can serve. Find a way that you can share the gospel with